A lot of people want to know what the situation is post convictions, especially in the swing states. I saw a poll yesterday from North Carolina where the lead there had grown from 8 points to 12 in a five-way race for the White House. Donald Trump expanding on his lead. Not so in Michigan. Brand new exclusive poll done by Michigan News Source. The survey done by Mitchell Research, which, by the way, Nate Silver and 538 called the most accurate polling company in Michigan. So good work there. Steve Mitchell, we were able to get him here. Steve Mitchell, thank you for being here on the program.
It's great to be with you this morning, Steve.
Greatly appreciated. All right, so you went out, I think your last poll in Michigan was, May 20th here, a little bit ago. And now you're here with this poll, and the race has tightened by a point. And when you've only got 2 points to give, man, it is razor thin. But Donald Trump still maintains a razor thin margin here in Michigan. What can you tell me?
Yeah, he really does. It's very interesting. After all of the publicity surrounding the conviction, 34 counts in New York, the race is essentially not only where it was on May 21st, but where it was on March 15th and 16th with this very narrow lead. It's now down to 0.6%. But remember, that's all within the margin of error of the poll. So it remains very close, and Trump continues to have this lead despite the fact that he was convicted of all those crimes. So Michigan is still in play. It's going to be a very, very close race in this state, and it may be the deciding state in terms of who's going to be the next president of the United States.
Well, it sure could, Steve. All right, so 0.6%, that's in a head-to-head race. Of course, when you put in 5 people, his lead goes to just over a point, to 1.2%. So, and it depends on what state I look at, whether Robert F. Kennedy is more of a hindrance to Joe Biden or Donald Trump. Here, it seems that he helps Donald Trump by 0.6 of a point.
Yes, in the last survey, he was actually hurting Trump more. So again, these are smaller subsamples, and the fact that it continues to be very close when you look at the difference between how many Kennedy voters are going to Trump or Biden, they're all within the margin of the error. It's very close, but nevertheless, despite Kennedy's presence on the ballot, Donald Trump continues to lead by a very, very narrow margin here in Michigan, according to the poll that we just did for your great Michigan News Source.
So, as you say there, nothing has moved since mid-March, basically. March 15th, 16th. So fast forward 2.5 months, and here we are. The numbers of, and here's the thing, this is what's remarkable, and you mentioned it here. All the coverage, all of the attempts by the left to paint Donald Trump. Now he's a convicted felon. They want to use that all the time. As I said, in North Carolina, Trump's numbers went up, and here they remain relatively steady. 1 or 2 points, 1 or 2 points. It depends on the survey, but 1 or 2 points. It remains steady. It doesn't seem that all of this has any impact on the voters. It seems to me it's all baked in, which brings me to one thing I do want to ask you about, and that's voter enthusiasm. Has that changed at all in the last month or 2 or 3?
It's certainly changed literally since the last month. When we did our survey May 2021, there was a huge enthusiasm gap between Republicans and Democrats. As a matter of fact, the Republicans, 70% of the Republicans said that they were very enthused, compared to only 48% of the Democrats. That's changed a lot now. There's still a big difference between the Trump voters and the Biden voters, where it's 85% to 70%. And so Republicans still have the advantage in the enthusiasm. But I think that while Republicans tout the fact that this really energized their base, Trump raised $250 million in the few days after the conviction was announced. This also seems to have really energized Democrats as well here in Michigan, because their enthusiasm has gone way up since the May 2021 poll we did.
Yeah, in fact, it's a good point you make there. The money that came in, almost $55 million in the first 24 hours, $70 million in the first 48 hours following the convictions for the month of May. And I don't know if that fundraising continued for Donald Trump. And mostly these are small donors, almost a third of them first-time donors to the Trump campaign. $141 million is what the RNC announced for its collections in May. Collections in May, $141 million. I mean, these are numbers that close the gap. And so enthusiasm, whatever the measurements are, people are happy to give $5, $10, $20, whatever they can scratch up at least on the Republican side, in the last few weeks.
That's absolutely right. And I think that because the reason for that is that many Republicans believe that this was an unfair trial, that it was an unfair verdict, that they had a judge that was conflicted. We asked the question, basically questions that were asked by Reuters Ipsos in a national poll. And 48% of the voters said that they thought the trial was fair, and 45% said it was not fair. We gave some information, both positive statements about why the supporters of Joe Biden thought it was fair, and why the supporters of Donald Trump thought it was unfair, and that moved that number to 48 to 47. So again, the country's deeply divided on this race. They're deeply divided on whether or not Donald Trump got a fair trial in New York. But the one thing that didn't change very much was the actual outcome of where the race is going. And it's just a very, very close race that could go either way come next November.
All right, so the other thing is, and I didn't see that you checked any of the congressional races. What was the congressional preference here, Republican or Democrat?
It was for the Republicans again, and it has been that way in every race that we've done. So, and also in the U.S. Senate race, again, a narrowing race there. We've got Slotkin leading Mike Rogers, Congresswoman Alyssa Slotkin, against former Congressman Mike Rogers, both of whom have substantial leads in the Democratic and Republican Party primary. That's a very close race. That's 33 to 30, a very close race in that one. So it's going to be not only a very close race in the presidential race. Michigan could determine who the next president is, but Michigan can also determine who the next Senate Majority Leader is.
You know, and I've looked at this, and you and I spoke here a couple of weeks ago when you did another poll here statewide for another organization. And if I'm a Democrat, I am concerned. Alyssa Slotkin has been the presumptive nominee, I think, in most people's minds for a long time. She has a substantial lead. Mike Rogers has now broken out of the pack with the Republicans, has a Trump endorsement, of course, and that helps him to gain some support. But Alyssa Slotkin cannot break out of the 30s. You know, Mike Rogers being in the 30s for now, he has an actual competitive primary to some extent. She does not. I would be concerned about her chances if I'm a Democrat.
That's going to be a close race, and you have to remember right now that Sandy Penciller spent more than $3 million so far, and most of that money has been attacking Mike Rogers. He felt he could get the Trump endorsement, Sandy Penciller did, and I think he was upset when Mike Rogers did. He has been attacking on television around the state Mike Rogers' record. So despite the fact he's been attacked on the right, Rogers still remains very, very close in that race for the U.S. Senate.
All right. Steve Mitchell Research, considered by Nate Silver at 538 to be the most accurate pollster in Michigan. Steve, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Greatly appreciated. All right, so there you have it. Donald Trump with about a 1-point lead. Let's just average it out. Whether it's a two-man race, he's got a 0.6% lead. If it's a 5-man race, it's over a point. Razor thin, which means you have to do your part and vote no matter who you support.